Hey guys, Dave here with Nerdarchy, 4 Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with some of my esteemed Nerdarchy crew.
I'm Ted.
Hey, I'm Ryan.
And today we want to talk about the right and wrong way to game.
Listen, is there a right and wrong way to game?
Absolutely, depending who you ask. Now, and really, this isn't something I've experienced personally in games. It's more so you see it in online communities about gaming, and there's definitely like this contingent of elitist gamers who, it's almost like they want to use their superior knowledge of gaming to elevate them above everyone else.
Nerd bullies.
Right, and if you don't meet their criteria, their qualifications, then they don't want to game with you because you're inferior. And going along the vein of our bad player video, which really wasn't about bad players, it was about letting people play at your table. So this is the same thing, and these guys are actually the ones that inspired me to come up with the topic of bad players. Right and wrong ways to game at the table.
I'm just kind of curious of who they have around them that like meets their criteria to like face-to-face tabletop. Because like online, you might find people that meet your standards, but
for years, you've had like the comics, or what we now refer to as memes, where you've got the gaming table that seems to hit. And it's got like one person of every criteria.
Yeah.
You've got the over role player, you've got the number cruncher, you got the hack and slasher.
Well, let's start off. There's two factions we have to start from, right?
All right, go for it.
Role players and role players. Okay, so it generally
that's ROLE and ROLL.
Yes,
because they sound the exact same to my ear.
And the role player, the thespian type immersive gamer,
they're into chicks. It's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah. They're usually the ones that are going to be the elitists, picking and choosing who is worthy to sit at their table or not. And the other faction, they're more of gamists. They like the mechanic part of it. They like playing the game. They like the tactical aspects of it.
The number crunchers, the hack and slashers fall into that.
And we've been very lucky over the years because really we actually fall in the middle. We're not immersive gamers, and we're not really role players. We're kind of both.
Well, it's kind of like the love of all of it. Like there's definitely a math head in my brain. I like numbers. My job deals with numbers and spreadsheets and this and that. So I get involved in that kind of stuff. And definitely with third edition, there was definitely that accumulation of power and numbers. Adding whatever. So there's that much. But I also minored in theater in college, so I actually like acting and role playing. I've done LARPing, so I like all of that as well.
To the numbers extreme, I actually had gamed with this like PhD scientist back in the day who basically had an Excel spreadsheet with all the damage expressions of the various powers he could take, and so he just figured out like that's min-max. Like you cannot go beyond that. Like so he figured out the optimal numbers like for
whatever he was doing.
And this was in 4E. Like he had figured out what was the optimal powers to have. Like it was ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah, it was pretty insane. But anyway, so
that would definitely be bad gaming.
Right, that's the wrong way to game.
The wrong way to game.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I should not have been doing that. Yeah.
But no, and so like at the table you have all kinds of different gamers. Like we said, you have the guys that are the gamists. They're the role players. They want to add the numbers together and come up with it. You got the guys that just want to role play. Is there any other kinds that you can think of? Any archetypes?
Archetypes of them? There's now this is legitimately a type of gamer I do because I commented on one of our videos about it. This is the gamer I really don't want to play with. Is the person?
Oh man, don't go there.
I had this guy who every single character was in like it was in an organized play.
Yeah.
And the abbreviation for this organized play is PFS. So I'm not going to say the name. But every single character this guy made, well, and even non-PFS games, but it was a female.
Oh jeez, yeah.
That was a lesbian. Every single character that this dude made was a female lesbian, and he would try to RP with other female characters as a female lesbian. And not only that, like, he would dump charisma. So his character is an unattractive lesbian character. So, like, I don't want somebody's fetishism you know, if you're a furry, great. I don't want it at the table. If you apparently you have a fetish about being a lesbian, like that's great. I don't want that at the table with me. That's a gamer that I'm okay with not having at my table, never gaming with.
Yeah. There's certain role playing situations that really should only happen behind closed doors.
Right. Yeah.
And the table is not a closed door.
Not with a bunch of dudes that like we want to have beers.
Or
and eat
even
pizza, like,
girls, man. I don't think they want that either.
No.
Come
Basically,
on.
if you're gonna, if you do something that like. If you think it might make people feel awkward and uncomfortable, you probably should not do that thing. Okay, so that's my PSA on that tangent.
Nowhere near to that kind of extreme. But I mean, I've had an encounter or two at our table that pushed my comfort zone, and I pretty much just had to tell the player like, look, that just isn't gonna happen. Yeah. Let's just move on.
Yeah, okay, so that's getting way off topic, and that's just. That has more to do with that's not a game issue. That's a personality issue, and there's just some things that don't belong in polite society, let alone the table. But I don't know.
You also had mentioned a thing about immersion, and like
yes.
we'll do a more video that's specific on that. But like I agree with Andrew Knapp, SR2 Joker, in that it's a really hard state to hit. True immersion. It's seldom going to be found. I mean, just to kind of put that out there for like the thespian player, like you have to be so on. Like actors in film, like they're not in character all the friggin' time. Even
they're if they're in character for minutes at a time.
Well, yeah, or maybe like maybe they're 30-40 minutes they're in character
per scene.
They're doing like they're sprinting. A thespian is that thinks that they're going to be in an RP state or an immersive state
for the hours of the game.
Your average session lasting 4 to 8 hours of a time. Like that would be mentally exhausting to put yourself into the state of another character.
Well, here's another thing too. Like going along with it is you have to accept people game for different reasons.
Right.
Yep.
We've had our group together for years. And my personal evolution through that whole time has changed as well.
I mean, it happens. Everybody goes through it.
Right. In the beginning, I probably was kind of more like the dickish, immersive role player guys out there who were like Nazis at the table. But as I grew and matured, it started turning into more like, no, this is actually what I do, once a week or a couple times a month to hang out with my friends who I don't get to see as much. And it's fun to role play and play the game, but that it became secondary to me just socializing with my friends with an activity we all enjoy.
Right.
So like, we definitely have players that get mad when things go off topic. After a while, I didn't really care anymore. I just went to hang out. As long as I got the front roll some funny shit dice.
There's been many times, well, maybe not many times, but there's definitely been times where, obviously, you've been running and you're a lot of times DMs stand up over top of the table so that they can see everybody and see what's going on, and somebody makes a comment, and next thing you know there's a full-fledged conversation is going on, and you just sit down, cross your hands, you just sat there and wait. Half hour, 40 minutes went by, nothing's going on but this conversation until finally someone says, so what's actually happening?
You guys want to play? What's up?
The only time I really hate that is when like the GM is actually building a story moment, like an important moment, and then people are gonna be like off to the fucking corner, like having the side conversation. They're like, because GMing is a really thankless job, like especially depending on your group. Like it's a lot of work to take on. You're doing literally 90% more work than anybody at your fucking table. And if they're not gonna like buy into your story at all, like that is the big payoff and reward, is getting people into it. So when people, that's the thing that really bothers me, is when people don't buy into like the important story moments of the GM's arc.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just a little matter of giving respect and
people just sometimes don't get it
and not being rude.
Right.
So I guess this video is a little bit confusing because I keep mentioning role player versus role player because you see those terms all the time, but we're
not spelling it out. Yeah, we're talking.
So you've got gamist and thespian.
Right. Yes, which we're just going to use them right now to emphasize the extreme,
the avatars of the two.
Extreme min-maxer and the extreme RPer.
Right. So most tables are going to have a mixture of both. So if you happen to have a group that is all one, then obviously you're going to want to focus your stories, and your campaign around that type of player.
But how many times are you going to end up with a group of like 5 to 6 people that are all kind of the same?
Right.
Know?
So most likely you're going to have a mixture of the two. So what you really need to do is you need to bridge that gap. You need to, work and have your game focused on both.
Yeah, not only that too, and understand that everyone's reason for playing is just equally valid.
Absolutely.
There is no superior way to play the game. It's, when I answer comments all the time, it's like you're asked this or that, and I'm like, well, what's fun for you?
Right.
If it's fun, that's fine.
Well, and your group of friends too. Like just because, even if you're the person running the game who puts all the work into it, if you're running a game that nobody wants to play, like doesn't enjoy,
there's no point.
There really is no point. You may as well back it.
Because you're doing all that work for nothing.
Because if you build the most, like thespian heavy role playing thing, and over half of your characters are gamists, then they're like they just want to like kill monsters and get
they're gonna drop dice and say, okay, do I
persuade him?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
well, what do you say? I got a 17.
Well, all right. The one thing I will say is like, especially as the GM, because you can direct your players' choices of things. Like, if you know somebody's a gamist, like, you might want to dissuade them from playing the face character, unless you're trying to break them out of their gamistness. But, like, if they're going to be the kind of player that, like, I have a 17 persuasion check, well, that's, you want the thespian in that role.
Then you start bridging the gap. You say, okay, well, what do you say?
What do you say?
And,
how do you say
and
it?
even if, their performance isn't spectacular, it starts getting them a little bit more comfortable with saying something. And you know what? How many of us at the table are going to say, oh, well, I've got an 18 intelligence. It's like, well, you're not really that smart. So there's times that the dice have to balance your own personal abilities.
Well, absolutely.
And that's fine. So if you get something out of those gamists in more of a role-playing thing, then great.
Yeah. You could also there's also ways to incentivize people as well. You'd have to do it as a sliding scale, because obviously, for instance, say you do have people that are more gamists at your table and you want to encourage them to do more role playing. Well, perhaps handing out XP bonuses. Like when I was in Scott's game, he's like, "Here's 250 XP." That was really cool. Yeah. So, but someone that role plays all the time, you can't give them the same reward because it's not as much effort for them. It's easy.
Right.
But maybe you find other ways. Maybe they do something cool mechanically in the game, and you entice them to do it a little bit more by offering the same kind of a benefit.
Well, or maybe so you give the extra XP to the gamist, you give the thespian inspiration to spend, because I mean, like XP is way more valuable. But like on the sliding scale, it's just like I'm acknowledging you did a cool thing, but like there's this other person.
Feature.
Yeah, but to the gamist, you're like, oh man, I want him to do quite a bit more.
You grew as a person, by coming out of your comfort zone.
Right.
So it deserves a little bit more.
Right. Exactly. So I mean, there's that, and talking about ways to like bridge the gap is kind of I mean personally. I still like to having combat encounters. Like I do like to roll the dice and making attacks, this and that. I also enjoy the actual like the thespian role playing part of it. So I think a good ratio is if you can at least have like 2 to 3 combat encounters during like a decent length session, say 4 to 5 hours. Like so 2 combat encounters, 2 to 3, and then like the rest is like things that propel your story, however that's going to be.
Well, and that's one of the things I like about 5e, because it's easy to get in 3 combats in 4 hours and a decent amount of RP as well.
Right.
So that works really nice.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like going off of this thing where you've got this group of people that feel like they can pick and choose who's at the table. It's like I feel like our niche is too small to splinter it up and start driving people out of the game.
Especially considering since you say there's so few people, if there isn't another group in your area, like you could totally just say, oh well, you can't come to our group, and that person's now going to leave the hobby, and as kind of our driving force, we're trying to promote the hobby, so we don't want people leaving. We don't want someone being kicked out of a group because they're not fitting a niche.
Yeah.
There's a comment thread going on one of our videos now, And it's kind of along that lines where they're talking about this person's a problem. Well, I'm like, and I almost feel like they want to give vindication for me to say it's okay to kick them out of your group or whatever. But how the hell am I going to do that when I'm only hearing one side of the stories and it's none of my business because it's not my group?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, somebody's got to be pretty deplorable, and so that's like they have to be an a-hole of a person more so than like just not somebody who's up to your standard.
And it comes back to people game for different reasons. Yeah. This is a social gathering event, whatever you want to call it. So not everyone's coming for the same thing, and it really how you can put an end to a lot of this is by starting off and everyone putting their expectations on the table. And go, I'm here for this. This is what I want, and nobody really does this.
Right.
My character's Kanye, and he's a giant.
Yeah. But this is the kind of things that people should actually think about doing when they're starting a game or when
it's like a prenuptial agreement for like the gaming table.
It is. It's a social contract.
Yeah.
Dave Sims is really big on this with his games. Is like when they get together, even just an online game, and they're doing their session 0 or whatever, or they're building the world that they're going to play the game in. He's like, okay, this is my expectation as the GM. You as a player, what are you looking to get out of it? How is this going to go for you? Why are you here, kind of thing.
Like, Right. I mean, it's like the idea of like the GM wanting to run a pirate campaign, and nobody cares about like.
And everybody wants to be a ninja.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, and nobody could give a damn about like admirals and navy terms and all that kind of stuff. You need the player buy-in because otherwise you're running it for your own.
Well, and that's it. So that's why to circumvent this problem is I don't want to say an interview process, but have a clear understanding as the GM what you want to put out for people, and for them as players have a clear understanding of what kind of game they want to actually play in.
Right.
And if you're over here in 1, 2, 3 land, and they're in ABC land, they're probably not going to mesh well. Yeah. So you either have to figure out a compromise, or figure out somewhere else the game more than likely.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, like when I was gonna run Dark Sun for you guys, like I put out a list of like 5 different kinds of campaigns we could play, and that one had the sheer most votes. Like everybody kind of had varied interests, but like that was the one that won out.
Oh yeah, there was the dimmer switch of interest.
Yeah. And on balance, that was.
Yeah, I had
most
put
clear.
Ravenloft because I hadn't done a serious Ravenloft campaign, and Mark was like, anything but Ravenloft. So I'm like, okay, well, my first.
Was he the big detractor of Ravenloft? Was it him?
I think it was him. Was either you or him that said it.
I don't think it would have been Dave. I think you're a big enough fan of the Gothic horror.
Yeah, that'd have been all right with me, I think.
So it's like, okay, well, Dark Sun was like on my second or third. So I'm like, well.
Yeah, I think it was most people like their second or third choice, on average. And that was how we came to a consensus of the game we were going to play. So
hopefully eventually we'll get back there sometime.
Yeah. Hey,
I know.
As soon as 5e has like full-on rules, I mean, like Nate's stuff is great, but like to run a whole campaign, I don't know.
It might be tricky.
Yeah, kind of tricky.
I don't feel like 5e's harsh enough for you. Yeah.
Well, like there's the water rules. I could play. I'm sure there's some heat danger stuff, and like I could crank up the DCs a little bit or something. So work something out.
With that, guys, if you have any suggestions, what do you think of? Have you run into this that kind of person that feels like they can just kick people out of the game at will because they have so many to draw from?
Yeah, I mean, or do you want to just tell us, F you guys, you're totally wrong-headed on this? You could do that as well. Yeah, down there too. So I mean, you could like, comment, subscribe.
Check us out on nerdarchy.com.
And you can even hang out with us on Facebook.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.